What's up everyone, welcome back to Priced Out. I'm your host and today we're diving deep into something that's absolutely blowing my mind. I just found out that 76% of everything tracked by the government got more expensive between July 2024 and July 2025. 76%. That means 3 out of every 4 things you buy, use, or need in your daily life costs more now than it did just 1 year ago. And honestly, this explains so much about why I feel like I'm drowning financially, and I know a lot of you are feeling the same way. So today, I want to break down exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and what it means for people like us who are already struggling to make ends meet. Before we get started, if you're new here, this channel is all about the reality of being priced out of the life we were promised. We talk about housing, inflation, wages, and all the ways that modern life has become unaffordable for regular people. Alright, let's talk about this 76% number because it's honestly staggering. When I first saw this statistic, I had to double-check it because it seemed too crazy to be true. But it is true, and it comes from government data tracking hundreds of different goods and services that regular people buy. Think about your weekly routine. Your morning coffee, your grocery shopping, your gas, your rent or mortgage, your phone bill, your streaming services, your car insurance, even that cheap fast food you grab when you don't have time to cook. The vast majority of all of these things cost more today than they did 12 months ago. Now, some politicians and economists will tell you that inflation is under control, that it's coming down, that we should be celebrating. And technically, they're not wrong about the inflation rate decreasing. But here's the thing they're not telling you, when inflation goes down, that doesn't mean prices go back to where they were. It's like if I was punching you in the face 10 times a minute, and then I said good news, I'm only going to punch you in the face 5 times a minute now. The punching has slowed down, but you're still getting punched in the face, and you're definitely not healing from all the previous punches. That's exactly what's happening with prices right now. The rate of increase has slowed, but everything is still more expensive than it was, and it's not going back down. We're living with the accumulated impact of years of price increases, and now we're getting hit with even more increases on top of that. Let me give you some real examples of what this looks like in practice. I went grocery shopping last week, and I spent $87 on what used to be a $60 trip. Same store, same brands, roughly the same items. That's a 45% increase for the exact same shopping experience. And this isn't some fancy organic grocery store. This is a regular supermarket buying regular food. I bought ground beef, and it was $8 a pound. $8. For ground beef. Not premium grass-fed organic beef from happy cows. Just regular ground beef. 2 years ago, that same ground beef was maybe $4 a pound. It literally doubled. And it's not just food. My car insurance went up 23% this year with no changes to my coverage, no accidents, no tickets, nothing. My phone bill went up $15 a month because my carrier decided to add new fees. My internet went up $20 a month. My rent increased by $200 when I renewed my lease. All of these increases individually might seem manageable, but when you add them all up, it's devastating. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, except each cut is taking money out of your bank account. And here's what really gets me angry about this whole situation. Our wages haven't gone up 76%. Not even close. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25, which is the same as it was in 2009. Even for those of us making more than minimum wage, most people got maybe a 3 to 5% raise this year if they were lucky. So let's do the math here. If 76% of things got more expensive, but your income only went up 3 to 5%, you're getting crushed. You're objectively, mathematically worse off than you were a year ago, even if you're working the same job and living the same lifestyle. This is why so many people feel like they're working harder than ever but somehow have less money. It's not your imagination. It's not because you're bad with money. It's because the entire economic system has shifted against regular working people. Now, let's talk about what's driving these price increases, because it's not just one thing. First, there's corporate greed. I know that sounds simplistic, but hear me out. Many large corporations have used inflation as cover to raise prices way more than their actual costs increased. They figured that if everything is getting more expensive anyway, consumers won't notice or complain if they pad their profit margins a little extra. There are multiple studies showing that corporate profits have hit record highs during this period of inflation. If companies were just passing along increased costs to consumers, their profit margins would stay roughly the same, but that's not what happened. They increased prices more than their costs went up, and they pocketed the difference. Second, there's housing. Housing costs affect everything because workers need places to live, and when housing gets more expensive, workers demand higher wages, which increases the cost of goods and services. It's a vicious cycle. When you have investment firms buying up entire neighborhoods to rent out, when you have foreign investors parking money in real estate they never even visit, when you have zoning laws that prevent affordable housing from being built, you get artificial scarcity that drives up prices for everyone. Third, there's consolidation in industries. When a few large companies control most of the market in any given industry, they can coordinate price increases without technically colluding. They just watch what their competitors do and match it. Look at grocery stores, airlines, telecommunications, healthcare, streaming services. In all of these industries, a handful of large corporations control most of the market. And when there's no real competition, there's no pressure to keep prices low. Fourth, there's supply chain issues that are still lingering from the pandemic, though this is becoming less of a factor. And fifth, there's monetary policy. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates near zero for over a decade, which pumped enormous amounts of money into the economy. Most of that money went to wealthy investors and large corporations, not to regular working people. Now, here's what really frustrates me about the political response to all of this. Both parties talk about inflation, but neither one is addressing the root causes I just mentioned. Republicans blame government spending, Democrats blame corporate greed, but neither side is proposing solutions that would actually bring prices down for regular people. Republicans want to cut government programs that help working people, which would make our lives harder without addressing any of the structural issues driving up prices. Democrats want to regulate corporations more, which is better than nothing, but they're not willing to take on the big systemic changes. And let's talk about what this means for different generations, because it's not affecting everyone equally. If you're a young person trying to start your adult life right now, you're absolutely screwed. Everything you need to become independent, to start a career, to build wealth, costs dramatically more than it did for previous generations at the same age. When baby boomers were in their 20s, they could buy a house for 3 times their annual income. Today, in most places, houses cost 8 to 12 times annual income. They could get entry-level jobs that paid enough to support a family. But here's what really gets me. Instead of acknowledging how much harder things have gotten, older generations often blame younger people for not working hard enough or for buying too many avocados and fancy coffee drinks. It's insulting and it's wrong.
The math is simple. If housing, education, healthcare, and basic necessities all cost a much higher percentage of income than they used to, then young people today are objectively dealing with a much more difficult economic situation than previous generations faced. And for people in middle age who are trying to support families, this is devastating too. You're watching your standard of living decline in real time. You're working the same job you had last year, but you can afford less. You're cutting back on things you used to consider basic necessities. I've talked to so many people who tell me they've stopped going out to eat, stopped taking vacations, stopped buying new clothes, stopped doing activities with their kids, all because everything costs so much more than it used to. For older people on fixed incomes, this is also terrible. If you're retired and living on Social Security or a pension that doesn't adjust for inflation, you're watching your savings get wiped out by rising costs for food, healthcare, and housing. So what can we actually do about this? Because I don't want to just complain without offering some solutions. First, we need to acknowledge that this is a political problem that requires political solutions. Individual lifestyle changes aren't going to fix systemic economic issues. You can't budget your way out of an affordability crisis that's affecting 76% of everything you need to buy. That said, there are some things we can do to protect ourselves. We need to be more strategic about our spending, focus on necessities, and find ways to reduce our exposure to price increases where possible. We also need to vote for politicians who understand that this is a crisis and are willing to take on the powerful interests that benefit from high prices. That means supporting candidates who will address housing affordability, break up monopolies, and regulate corporations that are price gouging consumers. We need to support local businesses when we can, because they're more accountable to their communities than large corporations. We need to organize with our neighbors and co-workers to demand better wages and working conditions. And we need to keep talking about this, because the more people understand what's really happening, the more pressure there will be for change. Look, I know this is depressing. I know it feels overwhelming. But you're not alone, and it's not your fault. The system is rigged against regular working people right now, and that 76% statistic proves it. But the more we understand what's happening and why, the better equipped we are to fight back and demand change. So keep sharing your stories, keep supporting each other, and keep pushing for a better system. That's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments what price increases have hit you the hardest, and what you think we should do about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and I'll see you in the next one.